Okay, hello everyone. Due to the success of my Murmur installation video for FreeNAS/FreeBSD, which was a lot more popular than I expected, I'm going to show you today how to install Owncloud. Owncloud is perhaps one of the most requested things that we get in the FreeNAS community for installation into a jail. Now, I'm going to show you all the aspects to it. I'm going to be talking a lot. Probably by the time I'm done with this video, we could be talking about 30 or even 40-minute video. I'm going to urge you to watch the video because I will tend to give a stream of consciousness that I think is going to be instructive as you go forward. So it's not just going to be a sort of lifeless, do this, do that, do this, and the other thing. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I'm going to pepper my comments with things that are going to be useful for you in general when you operate a FreeNAS or if you're operating in a FreeBSD-like environment. Okay, so first of all, what we have here, what I'm showing you, we have a virtual machine. It's only running 2.5 gigabytes. I hope that CyberJock forgives me. On FreeNAS 9.2.1.8, which is the current version of FreeNAS. That'll probably be changing soon, but that's what we're on right now. This is all we need for this demonstration. Of course, you would never be running a FreeNAS that is so poorly provisioned, but that should be fine for our purposes today. Let me just give you some caveats about what we're doing. The way I'm going to install this, the database that I use or don't use, and the way that I choose and configure a web server will be appropriate only for a smallish Owncloud installation, the kind of thing a guy with a FreeNAS at his house would want. What I'm going to show you today is not appropriate for large-scale enterprise installations with lots of users and lots of files on the Owncloud. It's simply the wrong way to proceed. Okay? So what I'm hoping is that there's two types of people out there listening to this. People that are just intending to use it on kind of a small-scale installation for their own use. You're going to be perfectly well served by exactly what I'm showing you what to do here. And then a second group of people, maybe somebody who's trying to get this deployed into a larger environment. You're going to need to do a lot of your own legwork, but this video tutorial will certainly get you talking the talk and down the right path. Okay. Also, I'm going to be ignoring security considerations. So if you are going to open your Owncloud installation to the larger web without a VPN or without other sort of security-enhancing environments, you need to do your own research on how to secure Owncloud, how to secure the web server that we're going to use, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I am not claiming that what you're going to see here is with good security, because it's not. This would be trivial for a professional hacker to get in there and wreck your stuff if you expose this to the web. So what you need to do is do your own research on security if you need it. And also, if you are going to be using a heavy deployment of Owncloud, again, this is not good enough for that. It is just a starting point. You're going to have to do your own research. But if you're like me and the FreeNAS is sitting somewhere in your house and it's just for use in your house or perhaps a very small business, this should probably do fine. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, Owncloud is one of the many plugins that you could use on FreeNAS. I'm not going to wait too long for this. There we go. So Owncloud is on here somewhere. We're not going to do this. You can see Owncloud right here. It makes its own decisions. It's hard to keep up to date because it's a push-button installer. You know, and this is fine for certain people, but most people watching this video are looking to make their own sort of personal install. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that from scratch without using these push-button installers that you have here. Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and get started. Also, by the time we're done with this, I'm actually going to go into this Windows 10 VM that you see over here, and I'm going to actually install the Owncloud client, and I'm going to show you how it works. And our test file is going to be this cartoon here. I think you cannot see what this file is because of the way this Open Broadcaster software works, but this is a Pink Panther cartoon that my kids watch. Okay, so let's go ahead then and get started. Again, I have running a FreeNAS virtual machine. For reference, I have this post that I made last March. Things have changed in FreeNAS. This particular guide in here, even though it's pretty verbose and, in my view, pretty well written, some of this stuff is not the way I do it today, and in any case, some things have changed in the FreeNAS universe, so I don't recommend that you follow this post exactly. Okay, but we are going to need some things that are already set up in this post for our own reference, so I'm going to keep that tab open. Okay, so let's go to jails. Set up your jails. If you don't know how to set up your FreeNAS to be ready to accept jails, well then look in the FreeNAS documentation and get that done. So I've assumed that you've already done that. Once you've already done that, you're going to add a jail. And my jail, when we actually go to add it, is going to add pretty quickly because I've done this before. I've actually made this video. I think this will be about the 6th time. And so I'm getting real sick of making this video, but something is always sort of wrong with it, and I do want to get it right because I know this is going to be 100 times more popular than the Murmur video, and the Murmur video has already been watched almost 1,000 times in just a few weeks. So I do want to get this right for you. So let's call this the Owncloud jail. We're going to use a standard jail. My IP address on it, I guess it's going to end in a 3. I'm going to uncheck vanilla and vimage, and when I do that, most of my selections here gray out because they're no longer relevant. You can leave the stuff that's blank. You can just go ahead and leave that blank. All right? Now, when I press go, this won't take very long. If you have never made a standard jail before, this process will download a standard jail template from our guys over at IX Systems, and that CDN that fetches from is pretty slow, so you might be there for quite a while you wait for it. But we are done. Our jail is set up. As is typical in a situation like this, if you've seen my other video, this little shell that comes with FreeNAS is okay for this or that, you know, 1 or 2 commands or whatever. But if you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be doing some actual heavy lifting with modifying files, I don't particularly care for it. So for my first act, when I'm using the shell, is to use the shell to give me access to a real shell via SSH. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to highlight the jail in question. I'm going to open the shell. My first step is going to be to create a root password for it. In this case, I guess it'll just be 123. Okay, just feel like I didn't do that right. Okay, 123 is my password. The very first thing I am going to do in any virginal jail is I need to have the PKG repository and software itself on the most up-to-date version. The version of PKG that's in the template, I think, is 1.2.7, and that's quite a bit behind where we are. So not only are we going to update some of these repository information, but you are also going to see that PKG itself needs to be updated to a much more recent and much better version. So we're going to say yes to all of that stuff. And this will just take a moment. Okay, there we go. There we go. Looks good. So I'm going to install Nano. PKG install Nano. Nano is a very simple text editor that gets the job done very, very quickly. And just like that, Nano is now part of this jail. I'm going to use Nano to modify the SSH configuration file because ultimately I'd like to log in with the big boy client instead of this little shell. And once I've opened this file, I'm going to use Control-W, which is the search function in Nano. I'm going to change 2 things. The first thing I want to do is I want to permit the root login, so I'm going to search for permit root. There we go. We're going to unhash that and set it to yes. And the next thing I need to do is allow for password authentication. So I'm going to search for password, and you can see right here password authentication is no. We're going to change that, of course, to yes, and unhash this mark. Okay? It's that simple. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do sysrc sshd underscore enable equals yes. This is going to tell this jail that whenever it starts, I do want this service to start up. So service sshd start. So now SSHD is listening for connections, and as I've already set a password for the root, I'll be able to log in directly as root using whatever my SSH client is. In my case, I prefer to use Bitwise. So Bitwise is probably, in my opinion, the most elegant of the Windows SSH clients, and I recommend it over PuTTY. So you can go to bitwise.com. It's free for non-commercial use. Those guys are pretty smart over there, and I do very, very much enjoy this particular program. So if you recall, I believe that was our email address, excuse me, our IP address for that particular jail. We are root. We're going to do password authentication, and it was, what was it, 123, was it, right? Okay, and there we go. I'll accept for this session. Okay. There we go. So we are now in our jail, which is our FreeNAS server that we have running. So I'm in here. Everything's looking pretty good. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get Owncloud. But actually, you're going to see this takes about 0.1 seconds. Actually, maybe that was a bit optimistic. It'll take a minute here to get all these dependencies. But you see, I just typed pkg install owncloud, and that is going to get not only Owncloud itself, but you can see all these PHP guys. Turns out that Owncloud is a group of PHP scripts. So all the PHP support stuff has to come in. Okay. So, there we go. Owncloud is now installed. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how do I start this program? You'll see you can't do this. There is no program called Owncloud. You see, this Owncloud, the software, really, on some level, is not the software. Owncloud is a bunch, these Owncloud things that we just downloaded are a bunch of scripts that get executed by PHP. The actual software is the web server. Okay. So this is a distinction that a lot of people don't understand. So the real piece of software here isn't Owncloud, it's the web server. Now, before we get on that, let me just show you where the Owncloud stuff gets installed. When you package install Owncloud, this directory right here, user local www.owncloud, gets created, and you can see these are the files in it. You notice there's not a heck of a lot there. There's not a heck of a lot there, and that's what Owncloud is. Of course, there's more stuff in these subdirectories, but it's really, you know, not the huge thing that you would expect it to be. The heavy lifting is actually done by PHP, and it's done by the web server. So now we have to get a web server. Typically, when you use like this push button installer for Owncloud, you're going to get Apache, and Apache is sort of the 18-wheel truck of the web server universe. It does everything, you know, and it's a very heavy lifting. We don't need a web server that does everything. What we need is a web server that does PHP and a common gateway interface for PHP, and that's about all we need. And we can use a considerably smaller, less resource-intensive web server to do that. And the one that I prefer for this kind of an installation is called Lighttpd. Okay, Lighttpd. You can go to Wikipedia and read all about Lighttpd if you want to. It's a very, very impressive web server. One reason that I like it, watch how fast this is. Look at that, done. It's installed. Of course, it won't do anything until we configure it, and that's going to consume the most of the video time. But the thing that is nice about Lighttpd is the memory footprint when it's just sitting there waiting for connections is very light. The total amount of demand for system resources is very light and only creeps up as you add more things to it. And so it is very conservative about using your system resources. Now, why should you care about that? Because normally you don't care. 100 megabytes here, a gigabyte there, doesn't really make that big of a difference in you know, most of your mundane tasks. However, it does make a big difference in FreeNAS, and the reason for that is that any sort of system resources that are not in use, that are not being commandeered by other software, become available for the adaptive cache and for the ZFS file system itself inside of FreeNAS, and that is exactly where your performance and your reliability come from. So you want to make absolutely certain that you are being as conservative about robbing the system of resources as you can be, because whatever resources are still available to the system will get used by the core functionalities of FreeNAS, which is your goal. So that's why you want to use as light of a possible of an install as you can. And so before we start configuring on this, let me tell you about databases. Owncloud in a large installation will need to use a heavy-duty database, MySQL. And that is a terrific thief of system resources, and it's also fairly complicated to get installed. And so if you need to do that, you should be aware that you should not lightly use MySQL on a very small FreeNAS. It will take a lot of resources from you. If you don't need to do that, and I'm going under the assumption that we do not, because we're going to do a smaller sort of install, you use sort of this embedded database called SQLite. Owncloud is able to do that. SQLite is almost nothing. It's like air. Of course, the trade-off is it's not ready to handle a big load. So if you try to load up your Owncloud real substantially with a lot of users and a lot of files, you're going to find that SQLite doesn't keep up, and you're going to have poor performance. Okay, so that's the trade-off. But the SQLite will be fine for the kind of small install that I'm targeting here. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin our configuration of the web server. Now I want to remind you of certain things. Configuring a web server from a virginal install like this is not entirely trivial. I'm going to make it look pretty easy, but that's only because I've done this 1,000 times. I encourage you to look at all of the documentation and learn what all these things do, because it's very interesting. And after all, that's why we use FreeBSD and FreeNAS, because we want to learn and enhance our skills. So I suggest you do that. There just won't be enough time in the day for me to tell you about all of this stuff. I'll make a few decisions in the web configuration that are just simply things that I prefer and may not have any particular very solid logical reason behind them. I mean, we all have our preferences. So, learn what these things are, decide if you agree with me or not, and, configure your web server accordingly. So here we go. The web server itself, the files that configure it are located in user local etc Lighttpd. And as is the case with many types of software, every single file in Lighttpd, so not only in this directory, but in these other directories that we are going to be messing with, you'll notice that every single file comes in a .sample. And the purpose to the .sample is to be the unmolested version of the original file. So you can see they're the same sizes. That's because they're the same file. So when you modify one of these files, if you screw it up, you can always recopy from this file and start anew without having to reinstall the software. So that's the purpose of those things. All right, so let's go ahead and use nano. And let's go ahead into lighttpd.conf, which is the very first step of this installation process. Okay. Many of these things are not going to affect such a small install, so I'll just be ignoring them, but you can read all about these if you want to. If I see anything interesting as I go through, I'll tell you about it. Okay, most of that stuff that we just passed won't actually have any impact on what we're doing here. Okay, server port is 80. Disable this. Most of you do not need IPv6. If you don't know what IPv6 is, then believe me, you don't need it, because you know. Disable it. I have found in the past that sometimes this web server does not work correctly when it's installed from packages without specific IPv6 support. So if you don't need it, disable it by hashing out this line. So that's what I always do. Okay. The document root. This is where, when you go to the website, where it's going to load the web pages from. Now, in our case, as you probably remember from a few minutes ago, that directory was called Owncloud, user local www Owncloud. So I'm going to set that in there. Okay. This we're all going to ignore. There is a server log for Owncloud. In certain installs, it will be very, very spammy with useless information. So if you're a power user and you're concerned about such things like that, you may want to disable the logging features. You can do your own research on it if you want to. Let's see. This is kind of an advanced thing, the event handler. In many cases, it is better to have a higher performance event handler in here. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But for any power users out there, it is possible to build Lighttpd with libev on it if you're going to do it from ports. Look it up if you think you're going to need libev in your jail for any other reason, etc., etc., etc. Okay, but for now, we're just going to leave that. Right V should be fine. Okay. We are going to change this. 2048 file descriptors is absurdly high for this kind of an install. I'm going to lower it to 256. That's still obscenely high. But we want to minimize any sort of system resources that we're going to take. The stat cache engine, totally irrelevant for this install. We're going to disable it. Okay. Max connection should be, 30, 40, 50% of the file descriptors. I'll just go with 128. Turns out that doesn't matter that much. We're going to leave all of this stuff. Leave all that. File name handling. Just want to verify that index.php occurs in the index file names list. It does. Okay. This we're going to leave. We're going to leave all of this stuff. Okay. Ssl Support. Let me tell you something. I am not going to show you how to enable this for Ssl Support. I do suggest that you do that. If you want to see how to do that, if you go back to this post here, which you can find on forums.freenas.org, if you search for Dr. KK and Owncloud up in this search area, this post will come up, and you'll be able to look through here. And if I show you where that is, here you go. Step 12 is creating an SSL certificate, and step 13 is instantiating it in the Lighttpd server. So you're going to want to read through how to do that, okay? But I will not cover that for you since that's pretty easy. Okay, so where were we? We were looking here. Okay. All right, here's something that you could spend a week figuring out what the hell's going wrong. This last line here where it opens up the socket, it turns out for reasons I don't particularly understand and didn't care enough to track down, but that socket is already open. And so this line, if you don't comment it out, it will attempt to reopen port 80 as a listening port again, which of course is not legal because port 80 is in use, so your server will never start. So what you have to actually do is you have to comment out this line. Okay? Okay, there you go. I'm going to use Control-O to save this file, Control-X to exit. Now we have a Lighttpd conf file in here that is different from the sample file. When I start Lighttpd, so let's go ahead and do that. Service, Lighttpd1, start. Okay. By the way, start doesn't work. You'll see what it says. Start is for a service that is turned on by default in your system. This service is not turned on by default in our system yet. So when you're starting one of those services, you put 1, start, instead of start. For stop, you would put 1 stop. For restart, you put 1 restart. Okay? So we're going to start it. The only message you get is starting Lighttpd. If you get that, that is good. If you get anything other than that, something was wrong with your startup. And you'll see Lighttpd running in here. And as I said, check this out. 31 megabytes. It's nothing. Start up Apache and see how much is in there. If you want to see a good joke. Okay? Alright, so that is started up. Now, watch what happens, though. We are not going to get joy when we go to this webpage. So 192.168.159.3. We're not going to get joy. We get 403 forbidden. And the reason for that is that the Owncloud scripts run on PHP, and we have not told this web server how to handle PHP. Okay, so that's going to be our next step. So let's go back to this. Let's stop Lighttpd. Okay, now if we go into modules.conf, so I'm going to use nano on modules.conf, you're going to see a whole bunch of different modules that you can simply start up by uncommenting a line like that. We don't need this particular module, so I'm going to recomment it. There's your server-side includes, you got your web dev, you got your compress, you got proxy, you got all kinds of things you can do, and you can go to the Lighttpd website and read all about that if you want to. What we're going to be concerned with is this Common Gateway Interface modules. And you have three choices here. In this post, I actually made the worst choice, I think. I chose this fastcgi.conf, and I have this big complicated thing that you put in here. It turns out that's a real bad idea. And the reason why that turns out to be a bad idea is because fast CGI, so maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself. CGI is the mechanism by which PHP requests are going to go to and from the web server, okay? And you have three choices for that. Fast CGI is a recent innovation, recent meaning many years now, but it's a fairly recent innovation in which there are some worker threads constantly listening for, the PHP commands to come through. Now, as a result of that, all those system resources are gone. Hundreds of megabytes of RAM gone. Can't be used for the ZFS cache. And it seems very, very wasteful to do that when you're only going to be occasionally syncing up Owncloud files. So I no longer recommend the use of fast CGI for this kind of a thing. We're going to use plain old CGI. And the way plain old CGI works is it doesn't do anything until you ask for some PHP to be rendered, and then it starts the Common Gateway interface and passes that off to PHP. It's, a few microseconds slower, but with one user, who cares? It won't make any difference at all. It uses far less system resources. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to uncomment it. If you're curious about SCGI, Wikipedia is your friend. Okay. So I think that's all I need to turn on. So I've just turned on that module. Now I'm going to have to actually go into the conf.d directory. I'm going to go for my Cgi configuration, which of course is this file. Okay. Let's take a look at this. So right now it's set up for Perl, Ruby, Python, etc. You don't see the PHP in there, right? The file, the program that handles PHP is called php-cgi. And this command which will tell you where it is located. So in this particular case, you see it's a user local bin php-cgi. So let's go back to this file and let's go ahead and add that. Now, when you add this, be very careful. One missing comma, one missing quote mark, and all hell will break loose. So do it very carefully so you don't forget anything. Alright, so this is user local bin php-cgi. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Okay, now we're 85% done. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and restart my web server. Now we are going to get a much different reception than we got before. Watch this. Here we go. Now this is excellent, right? This is joyful. This security warning, I'm going to be brief about this. It's possible, if someone knew exactly how the path structure in Owncloud worked, that you could go up into the URL bar and totally bypass authentication, go directly to some data directories and steal your files. Okay, in order to prevent that from happening, you have to, if you were using Apache, you would make this change to a file called .htaccess. You can do the same thing. You can prevent this from happening also in Lighttpd. Go ahead and read up on it if that's important to you, if you're going to be exposing your own cloud to the web and you want to prevent that from occurring. Okay, but I won't show you how to do that. But it is possible. Very basic Googling will get that for you. Okay, create an admin account. You do Dr. KK, and my password is going to be the very secure Dr. KK. Okay. SQLite will be used at the database. For larger installations, you're going to need to use a real database. Okay, that's what I've been telling you. Okay, finish that. Okay. And now this will bring you to the web GUI screen of Owncloud. Okay. Your Owncloud is running, but here's one problem, right? Watch this. Your upload max is 2 megabytes. Obviously, that's not going to cut it. That's just the way PHP comes out of the box. We are going to have to make that change, okay? So if you go back to my guide here, you will see that there is a few lines here that you can add to a php.ini. And you can spend your whole life learning about the various ways you can configure PHP. It's very complicated. People can have very, very complicated php.inis, but we're just going to have a very simple one. And we basically have to add lines like this to extend that upload capability, okay? So generally speaking, this particular file, php.ini, it will not exist. You will have to create it. So if we go over to user local etc, we've got a couple of sample php.inis, but you don't have the php.ini itself. So nano php.ini, and I'm going to go ahead and do this post max size. 4,000 megs, so 4 gigs. Upload max file size. Theoretically, that should be at least 1 unit smaller than the post max size. So I'm just gonna put that like that. Cgi.fix underscore path info equals 1. The jury's out on this, by the way. This is a security related setting for an Owncloud installation. You will find several sources that tell you to set it to 1, and you will find a few that tell you to set it to 0. I don't think it really matters, but I'm going to set it to 1. I'm going to ignore this upload temp directory and this memory limit. That's not going to affect our installation. So I'm going to save that file. Let's go ahead and restart our web server. Okay. Now, let's go and reload our Owncloud page. And you will see that my upload max is 3.9 gigabytes. Now, you can upload right in this web GUI if you really wanted to. Here's that cartoon I talked about. I'm just going to drag it in here. There it is. Boom. Okay? It just got uploaded to Owncloud. Normally, that's not how people deal with Owncloud. They deal with it using a client, and that'll be the next thing I show you in just a moment. But there is quite a few things to talk about inside of the web GUI interface for Owncloud. So if you go over here and you go to the admin, again, we are not using HTTPS. In order to use HTTPS, you're going to have to follow those instructions on how to generate a certificate and add it to the Lighttpd configuration. I assume you can handle that. I do recommend everyone do that, because that is so easy, and it's just the improvement in security for such an easy change is well worth it for all users. So I do suggest that you do that. This I've already explained to you earlier in the video, so you don't have to worry about that too much. I've explained this to you earlier in the video. This stuff, you can read about that if you care. This stuff, you can read about that if you care. Let me tell you about this. Owncloud has to run maintenance scripts for various reasons to keep itself running correctly. The way to do that, if you don't really know a lot of these nuts and bolts, is to use this Ajax thing. And what happens with Ajax is, as you go through and you use Owncloud, it knows to, every time you do something, it knows that to take the opportunity to do the, to activate part of its maintenance scripts as you're doing it. This causes the maintenance scripts to be done too much, you know, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not very elegant, but it's fun. It'll get you there. Just leave it if you don't know some of the more advanced tricks in Unix. Just leave it. But if you do, you know, if I say the following sentence to you, go into the cron tab for the www user and set cron PHP to run in PHP CGI every 15 minutes. If you know what I just said, do that. That is the big boy way to do it. And then check this box for cron. Okay? Etc. Enforce HTTPS. Once you, once you put the HTTPS on there, I would suggest clicking that box. Okay. All right. So there's all of those things. Other things of interest. Users here, you can set how much space people are allowed to have. You know, there's a quota. You can set all kinds of stuff in there. I'll let you tootle around with that. Under apps, if you go to apps, this will take a moment to do. Well, I don't know why that is, but that always takes a moment when you click apps. By the way, I think we're getting a little bit of lag here, and the reason for that The Windows 10 tech preview, which is running over here and which we'll get to in a moment, it'll just decide that it needs to update itself. There's no way to turn it off. It robs all of the system resources and it just lags everything. And that's just, I guess, how that goes. Under the apps here is a whole bunch of stuff that can run in your own cloud. You know, there's a document viewer, there's PDF viewers, there's a calendar thingamabob. You can read all about those. They're all very interesting. OwnCloud is very agile at doing a whole bunch of little plug-in-y stuff. Versions is very cool. Versions is a snapshotter. And as you upload things to your own cloud, it will take snapshots of them, just like your ZFS on FreeNAS. You'll have minute-based snapshots, day-based snapshots, hours-based snapshots, and so on. So you can read about that. That's very interesting. And you can download all kinds of different things for your own cloud. So that's all there. Okay? All right. Anyway, let's go and set up the Windows client. So I'm over here in my VMware Player virtual machine for Windows 10. This is the OwnCloud software from the website. You can go there and just get the client software. I'm going to go ahead and install it in this VM. Okay. Lovely. And then you'll see how very nice this is to set up. And if you're familiar with Dropbox, this is going to operate almost exactly like Dropbox operates. Okay? It'll have local file copies of everything that you have in your OwnCloud. So here's your little OwnCloud system tray icon, and here is the login screen. So HTTPS, if you have that secure sockets running, we didn't do that, right? So we'll just do HTTP. Here is the address port. Username was Dr. KK, password was Dr. KK. And that's it. We are going to put our OwnCloud in this particular directory. Open the local folder. Now look at this. This is beautiful. There it is. All of the default documents that come with every OwnCloud installation, plus that cartoon for the kids, is right in there. And sure enough, you know, you can, and it works the other way too. You put some file in here. Save it, and just like as if this were Dropbox, that becomes part of the synchronization to your own cloud. And so if you go here to the OwnCloud client, you'll be able to see in the activity thing, here's where all of the default files were downloaded, and here's you put your testdoc.txt. This was uploaded, and sure enough, if you go back to this browser here, and let's reload it, of course, and the test document will be right in there. Okay, and you can install this client on however many machines that you feel that you want to install them, and off you go. Okay, so everything looks like it's working to our satisfaction. Let's go back and do the final finishing touches. What I want to do is I want to make Lighttpd enabled by default in this job. So I'm going to add that. Okay. So now I think we're in pretty decent shape. Service Lighttpd restart, make sure everything's fine. Okay, that's it. OwnCloud is installed. We are essentially done. Okay. What you need to do is you need to install your HTTPS certificate. You need to get that done. And you need to make sure that this kind of an installation is correct for your particular case. As I said, you do not do it this way if you are either going to A, expose this to the internet. If you're going to do that, you have security considerations on PHP. You have security considerations on Lighttpd. You have security considerations on OwnCloud, and you got to familiarize yourself with the whole thing. Okay? And you do not do this installation if you're going to have a large number of concurrent users and a very large number of files. SQLite just cannot keep up with it. Okay, so in either of those cases, you're going to have to do your own research. Okay? Now, when it comes time to update Owncloud, what you will see, okay, so we're done with the FreeNAS portion of it. What you will see when you log in on the main screen is you will have the opportunity to update it right from the web GUI. It'll say click here to update. It'll download those files right in your jail. It will, replace those Owncloud script files with the new ones. And there's no change to the web server or anything. It's just a different Owncloud script, so you have to do hardly anything. It's really very, very simple. And that, my friends, is Owncloud, and that wasn't too hard. If you have questions, I can be found in the IRC channel for FreeNAS. I can be found in the FreeNAS forums. And, if you have a reasonable question, the community will be happy to help you. I'll be happy to help you. And I think that should do it. So yeah, the comments about the video are welcome. I spend a lot of time making, like I said, I've done this video 6 or 7 times just to get it right for you. And so it does help to know that the style of the video is what you are interested in. It does help to know that you were successful in obeying these instructions, it does help to know if you have any suggestions for how you might change the style or the content of this video, or if you have requests for other videos of this type where I go through with a very verbose stream of consciousness like this. Okay, well, I'm Dr. KK. Thanks for listening to this tutorial on installing Owncloud, and hopefully I can be of assistance to you next time.